everyone. Welcome to Work Love Wednesday. Daisy and Smelter here for Work Love Wednesday. It is time for Work Love Wednesday. Hi, Facebook. It's time for Work Love Wednesday. I hope you're having a fantastic week, getting prepared for the holiday that is happening this weekend. We're less than a week away from Christmas, if you're not counting down and don't know that. The time is 10:29, and we'll give it a minute to get started, and that gives me time to show you my snazzy holiday sweater. Check out the flamingo. Super excited. If you don't know, the flamingo is kind of the mascot for my newest book that came out the beginning of November, called Unstuck You, The Guide to Feeling Forward. That's available on Amazon or at leadershipizart.com/unstuck. And today, our topic is actually very relevant to what we're going to be chatting about and what those tools are in Unstuck You. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But today what I want to talk about is relationship boundaries. This past weekend on the Saturday, December 15th, we had our holiday open house and Sugar Rush cookie competition here at Leadership Arts Associates. It was an awesome time. We've also put out the save the date for next year, which is going to be Saturday, December 7th. It seems super early, but I know the holidays get really busy. And so if you want to make sure you make it, make sure you mark your calendars for that day. It's going to be the same thing that we did this year, where half of it is focused on personal development and self-care, and then we have the party at the end. So if you're interested, make sure you mark your calendars there. But at the holiday open house this past weekend, we did 2 workshops. Tony Hernandez kicked off the morning talking about self-care rituals, which was really awesome. And then I facilitated a session on boundaries, which is probably one of the most popular topics that comes up at this time of year. In fact, it was a podcast that I did about 2 years ago. It's the most listened to podcast on The Heart of It. And I basically shared that lesson because it was real for me at that time, and it continues to be real for me. During the holiday season, we get to reconnect with a lot of people that maybe we don't see all the time. We also get to be in close proximity and sometimes under a lot of very stressful situations during that time frame. And when we are doing that, we have a tendency, or not tendency, but the possibility of having some triggers happening in those relationships. And some of the struggles that we have is these relationships are not ones that we can just get rid of. They're people that are there with us. So they're in-laws, their loved ones, their family members, their childhood best friends that are like family. And we love them through thick and thin, but sometimes it's just difficult because conflict arises. I mean, conflict is just everywhere. Any relationship that you have, conflict is going to happen at some point. If not, then we would all be exactly the same and little clones of each other, which would make the world really, really, really boring. But I wanted to share a few thoughts about maintaining relationship boundaries by really just putting things in a different perspective. And so what I have found personally is that when I feel like my boundaries are being violated, the most beneficial thing that I have found to do for myself is to reposition whatever the situation is. So let's say, for example, sometimes it can be something really silly. It could be the tone that my mom has when she asks me to set the table for the holiday dinner. That could in itself be a huge trigger for something else that happened early on in my childhood, or something else that happened in my life, or something that happened early in the week that doesn't have anything to do with my mother. But it's when I get into my head and I'm just reacting to the things that are happening and what I'm feeling, that's when we have conflict that arises. That's when things build. And that's when we have these things that we basically are left with trying to figure out how we're going to recover from them after the holiday season. And so my number one recommendation to you is when we're talking about relationships, healthy relationships are about 50-50. Yes, there's some give and take, and they'll move back and forth as people need you and you need them. But for most of the time, most of the time, a healthy relationship should be 50-50, which means the give and take should be pretty even. And people should meet you in the middle. So that's really a gauge for a really great, healthy relationship. If you feel that it's one-sided, if you feel that you're always giving and they're always taking, then there's something a little bit more to explore in that relationship. But it should be 50-50. With that kind of concept there, I always say that there's 50% of any situation that you can own, and that's the only part that you can control. You cannot control other people, no matter how much you want to, or how much you want to try, or how much you want them to change. You can't do it for people. Everyone's got to make that decision for themselves. Here at Leadership Arts Associates, it's always interesting because I will have people who come in and say, I think so-and-so should come and see you. I think my friend should come and see you. And you can tell them all you want about it, and I really appreciate that. But if they don't want to change, if they're not ready to change, they're not going to be able to, not that they're not going to be, well, they're not going to be able to because they don't want to, so they're not going to do anything, but they're just not going to do it. So sometimes you can have the best intentions in the world, you can want it, you can wish it, but you can't control other people. You control yourself. You can control your growth, your personal development. You can take control of your 50% and make decisions there. You can decide when you realize that a relationship's more 80-20 and you're putting in 80% and they're taking 20%, you can decide if that person's not going to change and you've reached out, if you want to walk away. You don't have to stay giving the 80%. It's not something that you have to do. Everyone shows up, everyone takes responsibility for their piece, and we make decisions on what's best for us, to serve us, to take care of us. And so that's something that's really important to just keep in mind. So talking about this 50-50 concept and this idea that there's 50% in any situation that I can own, when you find yourself in a situation where you are being triggered, and typically we want to transition to blame because it's one of the things that we love to do. That's why gossip and chit chat is so popular, is we want to take a situation and we want to attach it to someone, to blame them. So it's their fault that we're feeling this way. We don't want to say that it's our fault that we're feeling this way. And in reality, there is 50% of that situation that is because of us as to why we feel that way. And I challenge you to take those opportunities when you feel like you're being triggered and shift your perspective to saying, this is an opportunity for me to learn. This is an opportunity that helps me process something that maybe I am not either fully aware of, or I'm in denial about myself. And here's the therapist kind of lines, get curious about what that means. Get curious about why I'm upset, or why that person's giving me anxiety, or why I'm afraid, or why I feel alone in that particular scenario, and use that as an opportunity for that. And so during the holiday season, as you have relationships, I think people are some of the greatest lessons we can have in life. I really think that people coming in and out of our lives are the best lessons. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about the HR industry, and feel incredibly blessed to work in an industry that's centered around people, because I think then I get to have a plethora or a high level of people that are coming in and out that have taught me so much. But people show up in our lives for reasons, whether we like them or not, they're there. And so one thing to remember is that, the shadows that I see in you reflect the shadows that are within me. So when I don't like something in somebody, it really is a reflection of something that I don't like within myself. And once again, that's another opportunity to think about. Just like the light I see in you reflects the light that I see in me. Usually when we see the good in something, in somebody, the things that we like about somebody, it reflects a strength that we have, whether we're in denial about that strength or not, but we are admiring it from afar, and it reflects something that we personally have and are achieving. And so, this holiday season, as you're entering into the arena of growth, which is really what I see it as being during the prime season, that asks us to reflect, that asks us to go inward, even though we have all of these like super loud sweaters and beautiful events and opportunities to connect with others, make sure that you connect with yourself and give yourself permission that, in the scenario that I have, when your mom asks you to set the table for the holiday dinner and you stop and you're like, my gosh, that it irritates me, the way that she used that tone or whatever it is, to take that moment and get curious about why and what is really coming up, because it's not about the ask for setting the plates for the dinner table. It's about something else for you, not necessarily about, it doesn't have to be about that relationship. It can, but it doesn't have to be. It's a growth opportunity for you. And so always coming from this place of, what can I own in this situation? What can I use to further my growth and my development? Because that's all that I can control. And I think the number one thing that I see routinely, and I say it all the time to people, and I had to learn this the hard way, you cannot control other people. You cannot make them do things, no matter how much you want them to, no matter how much potential you see in them. And this is one of my biggest struggles in the HR industry. No matter how much potential you see someone, if they don't want it, if they don't want to change, you can't make them. You can just do everything possible to show that you're there, to love and support them, to give them the tools to succeed. But at the end of the day, it's up to them if they're going to show up 50-50. For a healthy relationship, they got to show up 50%. You got to show up 50%. So if you are someone who's exploring those kinds of thought processes and recognizing some of those trigger kind of feelings that pop up, and you're thinking about, how do I process those further? How do I get to the actual lessons that are behind? Because I am curious. The Unstuck You book with the flamingo is all about talking about uncovering things that cause us, when we don't pay attention and are intentional about learning the lesson, they cause us to essentially disengage from our jobs, from our lives. And as we disengage, we slowly trek down the path to where we ultimately end up unhappy and so disconnected from where we wanted to be or where we hope to be someday. And so that book that's specifically why it was designed. I ran the workshop for 3 years, had incredible results with these beautiful, intimate groups of people who took the process and let it evolve and serve each of them personally as it needed to. And I wanted to be able to give access to so many more. And that's why we created it. It's like an at-home program in a book. It has everything that you need to know in there to help you process and go through those steps. And I think it's a beautiful starting point if you have no idea what to do and you are curious. So that's all I have for this week's Work Love Wednesday. And if you are watching even later and not live, make sure you say hello in the comments so that I know that you stopped by, because I don't see who views. They just tell me that people viewed. They don't tell me who watched. And yeah, we'll chat next week. See ya.